Welcome, everybody. I'd like to thank you for joining our webinar this morning, this afternoon for our friends on the East Coast over there. My name is Paul Smith. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Kuali, and I'm excited to have the team from Gettysburg College joining us today to share their story. We have with us Gavin Foster, the Associate Vice President for Information Technology, Rebecca Barth, who is the Assistant Director of Human Resources, John Whitehouse, a technical lead and project manager, and Andrew Myers, a systems analyst, all from Gettysburg College. So we're going to get a really diverse view of the Kuali Build rollout at Gettysburg College and hear about their experience. Really excited for this one. Unlike a lot of other webinars that we've done for Kuali Build in the past, Gettysburg is a relatively new Kuali Build customer. And as we started to learn more about their rollout and some of the early success that they had, we thought this could be a real inspiration for a lot of our prospective customers out there who are considering Kuali Build and thinking about moving forward, but maybe not really sure how to get from point A to point B. So this is a good excellent case study of what I would call an accelerated, successful digital transformation effort happening at Gettysburg College. Let's see, a few housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded, and I mentioned in my email to y'all that I will send out the recording afterwards. So if you want to share it with your compatriots and coworkers, you'll have that link. All of you are on mute currently. If you have questions or any feedback, please be sure to click the Q&A button down towards the bottom of the screen, and I'll field those questions as they come in. Let's see. I'm going to do a brief introduction to Kuali Build now and try to keep this under 5 minutes. I know nobody wants a commercial. They came here for the good stuff with our friends from Gettysburg. But just a few points to kind of help set some context for this webinar. Our tagline at Kuali is software for the future of higher education. We firmly believe this. What we're doing right now, we like to think of as the next generation of administrative software in higher education. And if you think about generations of software, go back to the beginning where you had COBOL-based systems, green screens, a lot of client-server technology, and eventually Windows pops up, you have Windows-based software, and then the web comes along around, the mid-noughts, and we have the early versions of web-based software. And that's kind of where most of higher education is today. What Kuali has been working on is what we consider to be the next generation of software that leverages a lot of the advanced capabilities that have really come into the development world over the last 5 to 10 years. When we talk to IT groups and universities in general, we're hearing some pretty common issues that folks are dealing with. One of them is central IT just has a constant fire hose of inbound tickets, requests for apps, for solutions and services, for new software, and IT does their very best to service all the departments across a university or college, but they can often become overburdened with those inbound tickets. And this is happening during a time of shrinking budgets and, positions not getting backfilled if people switch jobs. So that creates a lot of additional pressure on our IT groups. Another thing that we hear is delays and errors in current processes. And this is just legacy business processes that have been around forever. Digitizing those can be a challenge. And so the current way of doing things often means that a simple approval can take weeks. Another thing that we hear is lack of integration. I, as a parent of 2 children who just went through the K-12 system, can tell you numerous stories about having to write my address 12, 15 times each and every year for everything. So integration is a way to solve that problem, as well as re-entering data, right? So a lot of data entry errors. If you already have information about your students or your faculty or your campus, in other systems and you want to build new forms, that data should flow into those new forms. So eliminating those errors. And finally, security problems. I mentioned overburden IT at the top here. one of the things that can often happen as a result of that is departments will often say that they go rogue and they'll go out and find their own third-party systems that are not necessarily in alignment with Central IT's security policy or their priorities as for the university or college. So Kuali Build is a way to address all of these issues. When we think about the world of this next slide, I'm going to talk about the world of solutions that are out there for creating online forms and workflow automations. There are two major buckets that we see. The first is solutions that could be described as simple as easy. This is Google Forms. This is Microsoft Forms or, Power Automate, SurveyMonkey, perhaps. There's a variety of very simple tools out there, but, they don't require developers, and that's great, but they don't address all of the needs that a campus might have. On the other end of the spectrum, we see solutions like FormStack, Nintex, Smartsheet, Dynamic Forms. There's a variety out there, and they're very powerful, but they require a developer to create robust solutions, right? There's some degree of coding involved. They could be low code or high code solutions to create those online forms and workflow automations. Kuali Build sits in the middle. It is as easy to use as Google Forms, or Adobe or Microsoft, but it has capabilities that make it as powerful as some of the other, low code solutions that are out there. This is a true no code solution that's very, very easy for non-technical users to use. And I'm actually going to pause there, Gavin. I think I have a couple of slides that I want to show at the very end, but I want to save time and I don't want to blather on too much about Kuali Build. That is the essence of what the team is here to share today. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, if I can find it, and hand things over to you, Gavin. All right.
Let me try this, and yeah, I think we're in slideshow mode. Thank you, Paul, and that was a great introduction of Kuali Build, and I suspect people are going to be hearing sort of a similar story, but with more detail than the one that you were starting to tell just there. So again, I'm Gavin Foster. I'm the Associate Vice President for Information Technology at Gettysburg College. I think Paul already introduced Becca, John, and Andrew, and we will be just kind of talking through our experience with you over the last 5 months since we have signed the contract, I guess, and got going with Kuali Build. Just a little bit about Gettysburg College. Beautiful campus on the East Coast in rural Pennsylvania. Founded in 1832, we're a highly selective national 4-year residential college of liberal arts and sciences. Enrollment in the 2200s, domestic students of color, 21%, and increasingly international students. We have great first-year retention and sort of 6-year completion rates. So it's very small, very proud of what we do here at the college, and many of us have been here for years and love it here. Oh, yes. You've probably heard of Gettysburg for other reasons than Gettysburg College. Abraham Lincoln visited somewhat after a rather catastrophic battle that took place here, and I don't want to minimize that. When you walk around Gettysburg, everybody is fully aware of the consequences of a devastating 3-day battle and the 20,000 to 30,000 people who lost their lives here. Obviously, this is just a little piece of the Gettysburg Address. One of the great traditions at Gettysburg College is that all of our first-year students walk over to the National Cemetery in their orientation week and hear the Gettysburg Address read to them. It's one of the things that people remember really for the rest of their lives, makes a memorable impact on folk. So just a little bit about the college, where we're at, and some of our traditions. So to the topic in hand, really, why did we start down the path with Kuali Build? As I said, we're a small institutional a small institution, but as we look at the higher education landscape, I'm sure the rest of you are pretty similar to us. We're seeing a future where we have fewer students and therefore fewer employees, but our great challenge is that the number of business processes are going to stay about the same. So that is going to drive us to need to be more efficient with the way that we work. Our new CIO and also VP for Finance and Administration brought together a group called the Process and Procedures Group, whose job is to take the work out of our processes so we can be more efficient across the college. In order to get more efficient, we're standardizing processes and then we're training on those standard processes. So I think, as Paul said, it's not just the implementation of a piece of software. There's some pretty big cultural business process changes, and Kuali is the tool that we've adopted to help us to get to this new level of efficiency across the college. A little bit more about the why Kuali Build as opposed to anything else. It was about a year ago we started thinking about how to get more efficient. As we went through this process, we reached out to our colleagues at other institutions. Vince Kellen at UC San Diego is a very trusted colleague, recommended we take a look at Kuali, chatted with Liz in Kuali, had some demos and so forth, looked at other options, and obviously we selected Kuali Build. But just to give you a sense of how the college works, here's our map. The sort of red cross over here in the middle is our central administration building, and everyone else, other departments are scattered all around. And here's how we work. We got some paper processes. We got web forms, we got PDFs, more PDFs, we got some Google Forms, I hate to admit, and even some PeopleSoft processes and Microsoft Forms. And so all of these sort of jumble up, move around across campus. Most of them, every form implies a process, and the forms really don't get the job finalized and done, lead to this inefficiency that we're trying to move away from. So I'll hand off to John here, who can kind of talk about the pre-Kuali state and then go from there.
Thanks, Gavin. Good morning and good afternoon. At Gettysburg College, our system of record is PeopleSoft. We run the student, financials, and human resource modules. In addition to PeopleSoft, we also use OnBase for document management. So over the last 20 years, our team of very skilled PeopleSoft developers have developed amazing custom applications for both our academic and our business units. In addition to that, our OnBase developer has created some tremendous workflows in OnBase. But here's the problem. The problem is, because of the pace of change in higher ed, both the PeopleSoft and OnBase development processes are too slow. Andrew?
I think that's Becca.
Yeah, I was waiting for the Kuali Build to come up.
And I had to click. There we go.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rebecca Barth. My pronouns are she, her, I've actually been at the institution for almost 18 years. So I have seen a lot of processes. I have been through the implementation of various platforms. And I will tell you that the one thing from the HR perspective that we were really looking at was being able to streamline a process without having to burden our IT folks, and being able to have that autonomy to do this work and have that collaboration aspect with IT, but taking ownership of the process. And we really wanted to look at, the integration aspect, which Andrew is going to talk about in that collaboration.
Yeah, I'm Andrew Myers. I'm been with data systems as a programmer and systems analyst for 12 years now. I was involved in the quality from the sales meetings onward, and the first things that we noticed were the power of integrations, and integrations are what drew us in, that we can access our data, we can leverage our data, we can pull in dynamic data to these forms without coding pages or anything like that, just using REST API. And at the same time, we can also write back into our systems of record using this. Now, we were hesitant at first because we had our concerns with integrations, which were data integrity, data security, and it all fitting within our data governance policies. When we started investigating and seeing what was there, we realized we were the ones writing the integrations, we were the ones implementing the integrations, and IT is involved in the process so that we can make sure that we're aware of what data is being displayed and to whom and how it's being used. That way we can meet all of our data governance needs.
And that comes back to me, and I'm going to tell you about my story. So, the HR revolution and how we really wanted to move from static documents and paper pushing to enhance the user experience and make it easier on the back end, because we really wanted to focus on the human aspect of our job and supporting the humans and our employees, rather than pushing paper around constantly, which was taking up a lot of time. When I actually went back through and was looking at a starting point, like what did I want to work on first? There were so many different options that we could choose from, but I actually met with our HR coordinator, and her biggest pet peeve was the personnel information update form. And it was actually a piece of paper. So the process was an employee had to come to human resources, get the paper, fill it out, hand it in, and then that started a process or a workflow within our office. I was actually skeptical. I was like, John, I was like, change is hard for people. And when you throw in new technology into that mix, people are like, like what's going to happen? And, I'm one of those weirdos that, I love change and I love technology, but I have to be able to present this to other people so that they will also take ownership of these systems and these processes. And, I was like, well, what are you selling me? What is it about Kuali Build that is going to make my life easier and make me be able to sell this to other people on campus? And it really was the fact that Kuali Build takes it from start to finish. I was looking at, different things that like I've been here 18 years, and, I've been in all kinds of situations, and no one system could give me everything that I wanted. And, looking at Kuali Build, I was actually invited to the process and procedures working group. And I got to come on to a webinar with our support specialist, and she was showing us the capabilities of Kuali Build. And I was like, I was like, this is me. This is what I need. I love it. And I could immediately see the benefits of how this was going to revolutionize not only our work in human resources, but our work across the institution. And I was like super excited. And, the first app that I'm going to like walk you through is the personal information update form. Now, I will tell you that this part is critical. You can't use Kuali Build without doing this. And it is a very, very good practice about looking at your workflow. You have to be able to know your process inside and out. And when I started working on the workflow for the personal information update form, I had about 20 of these papers stuck around my office because I'm like totally old school in some ways and I'm very visual. So I wanted to be able to write things down. I started with post-it notes on them and they kept falling off. So I just went to markers. But you know, I could write things. People could come into my office. They could look at the process and say, oh no, you're missing something here. And then they could make notes. And this is the actual process as it stands today. That is the narrowed down from the 20 pages into this is what our workflow is going to be. If you want to get technical, go right ahead. There's all kinds of platforms out there, Visio, Lucid Charts, that you can use to do this, but you most definitely need to do this. The one thing that happened during this process was we realized that we were duplicating effort, excuse me, and with our payroll office. So we were collecting tax documentation on forms that we built. And then we were taking that information, uploading it into OnBase, and then payroll was pulling that information out of OnBase. And I was like, why are we doing that? And when I started talking to people in our office, and then we brought in the payroll office, we were like, no, you guys have these forms. We can use your forms, we can use your links, and the information can flow directly to you because it's not information that we need from an HR perspective. We were just playing nice in the sandbox, so to speak, and collecting that information and passing it on as part of the process. Well, now, as part of this process, we are cutting out that back and forth and moving into a way to communicate with each other that standardizes the process. It makes it easier for the submitter and it makes it easier for the back end user. And I'm going to go to the next slide. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual form. And John and Andrew are going to pop in here with me in just a minute. But I really wanted to talk about the ease of using this form. What you're seeing here is, you know, the form that I actually created. The form itself took me maybe 10 to 15 minutes to create because everything is like drag and drop. You take your gadget, you put it onto the form. It does have logic that any of the gadgets that you click on, you can see. But the greatest thing is that IT was always behind me. You know, when I had questions, when I needed to collaborate, when I couldn't think through the logic or the logic was getting jumbled in my brain, you know, we have our process and procedures group meetings where IT would join us and we would, you know, have that time to think together. But it's that type of support that they gave us, you know, even though we were, you know, the owners of this process, you know, they were able to come behind me and, you know, lift me up and send me on my way with a little bit of help. And John, I'm going to pass it over to you to talk a little bit about the different things that are in the form.
Thanks, Becca. So let's take a little tour of the form development environment. So starting on the left, where we have our orange circle there. These are gadgets, and they are actually called gadgets in Kuali Build. And what you simply do is you drag and drop these gadgets. And in the middle portion here, we drag and drop those gadgets into your development environment. So it's kind of like a WYSIWYG development environment. What you see is what you get. Again, no coding, no coding. And then on the right, you can add enhancements to your gadgets on the form. And an example would be to hide a gadget based on a response to one of the radio buttons or checkboxes. Andrew.
And at the top here, you see some integrations. These are headless integrations. They won't appear on the form, but what we're doing is we're pulling in home address, mail address, and campus address from our PeopleSoft ERP and directly onto the form, and they're displayed down below. And this is all done essentially by drag and drop again in the integrations, you can pick which elements you want and just drag them into position on the form. And then down lower, you see a direct integration where we're pulling out the current legal name and the current chosen name of whoever is creating the form just directly onto the form. There's no effort required. We know who it is once they log into the form, and we can pull in their information, which reduces data entry errors and the potential for mistakes and incorrect information.
And this is back to me because this is probably one of my favorite things in Kuali Build. So you not only have a design mode, but you actually have a preview mode. And we're going to go to the next slide, and you can see that this is the form. This is what somebody sees when they're actually in that live environment. And you saw the actual form. There was a lot more stuff on there, but not everybody needs to see all of that. So we really built it to function so that whenever somebody clicks on something, they get something else. So if they click on this, they get that. As you can see in this is where they said, I want to update my home address. Now, this informs more information in our workflow, but you can see on here is one of the things that payroll wanted to be able to see was, what was the current home address in the system? What is the updated address? This way, if somebody happens to answer the question down below, maybe moving information for tax purposes, they can then follow up through the workflow. But this is a great way to like bounce back and forth between design and between preview, just so that we make sure everything's working correctly and IT is not burdened with that. We can do our own spot checking to make sure that everything is working. And if you want to jump into the workflow, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the workflow. So this is the next part that's like totally amazing. We were able to sit and take the workflow that I created on my charts around my office and say, okay, now what is it that do we want to do? How do we want to automate this process? And the great thing about in the workflow part of it is it's also drag and drop. They have all of these steps that you can pick from, whether it's an approval, whether it's a notification, you can create scenarios and branching, but there's a lot of different aspects that you can do. So one of the things that we received feedback on from our employees was we don't know whether or not it was submitted. So the first thing that we decided to do was to create a notification to the person who submitted the form saying, thank you for submitting the personal update form, and we'll be in touch. The second part of that was actually the second notification there. I'll get to the branching here in just a second. Was the notification to payroll, letting them know that somebody chose home address, because there's other things that need to happen on their end, and that's where the branching comes in. Based on the payroll notification, there were 5 different scenarios that could happen. So I remember in one process and procedures group meeting, Andrew and Chris and I sat there for about 30 or 40 minutes until we figured out how to get each notification, how to build the logic in, if somebody moved to a different municipality in Pennsylvania, what tax forms do they need? And then the great thing is that those notifications are totally customizable. So you can, send it out to the submitter. You can submit it out to different people on the form. Like with the payroll notification, I could say, I want this to go to payroll@gettysburg.edu. Rather than a single person. So there was a lot of ways to customize that. And you can also pull in variables, which was what I really liked about that is I didn't have to go back and say, oh, so-and-so submitted a form. I pulled the variable based on what they submitted, and it automatically integrated that information into that notification and sent them, the payroll gave me all of their links and everything, that the language that they wanted sent to the employee. And that's what went into those emails. And you can see in the next part is then, this is the only part that is actually human resources, is we had three tasks that needed to happen. We needed to make sure that Highmark, Delta Dental, and PeopleSoft were updated because we don't have this one completely integrated into PeopleSoft yet. We are working on it. And then the final step was, after our HR coordinator signed off on those tasks, was to send an update to the submitter saying, thank you, your information has been updated in the system. There are a couple of other systems that, like TIA CREF, that they have their own login and they have to make that change on their own. So just putting that little tickler out there for them so that they would know what they needed to do next. And I'm going to let, I think it's Andrew, you're going to talk
Yes.
a little bit about the PeopleSoft integration that will be coming.
Yeah, as Becca said, it's not finished, which is one of the power that we have here, is that these aren't really, they're not set in stone. We can alter them as we go, and in a number of occasions we've responded to bottlenecks and things like that and improved what we have in the forms. In this case, we will be putting in an API that will write to PeopleSoft. We'll put in an integration that writes this data back into PeopleSoft. It's a little bit further down the line. I mean, there was no immediate need for it, so we're not doing it just yet. But that will be coming, where we'll be able to just write this information directly into PeopleSoft, eliminating the need for data entry.
And now I'm going to talk about my next favorite thing about Kuali, is the fact, like on the other side on the form where you could preview things, on the workflow, you can use the workflow simulator to test your workflow. So I actually sent this out to, a couple of people within our office. They worked through it, I worked through it. And it shows you from start to finish what things are going to look like on the back end. So this is where the person has filled out the form. They have chosen what it is they want to do. And in the next slide, you'll see here's a sample email that goes out to the person. There is an email that goes out to our HR coordinator that says, here are the tasks that you need to complete. And, we were able to run this through several times just to make sure that no matter what someone clicked. I remember I had 2 or 3 people in payroll and myself and our HR coordinator doing testing. So again, this isn't something that we have to bog down our IT people with, because now we can do it ourselves and make sure it's functioning correctly.
And so I think what you've heard, I think pretty intentionally, sort of Becca, Andrew, and John have all been talking about the process as we've moved forward. To summarize, I think the last 20 minutes, Kuali builds partnerships across the campus for a digital transformation. This is really critical. It's not like HR has been left to its own devices to sort of work out its own solutions, but we've really developed a very effective way of working together. It's a very different way than we had been working together, in my case, for the last 20 years, and it's an absolute breath of fresh air to see how fast we can turn things around. So I'll turn to John to kind of start us off with this little process flow.
Sure. So let's first talk about our training. We approach training with the belief that competence builds competence. So what we've done is we've developed a self-paced training program that all Kuali Build trainees must complete before we give them access to our production system. This material that we use, I had a month to create this, so I couldn't build it from the ground up. Kuali has an amazing training site. And what I did was I selected some key articles and associated videos. We have people watch those. They cover the key concepts we need them to know before they become a developer. After they do this, we have a final exam, basically, to measure their competence. And what that is, it's a final project, a Kuali app that we give them, and it requires them to use the skills that they've covered in the self-paced training. Now, also during this training time, we give them access to the Kuali Build sandbox environment. This is a place that they can go out and practice the skills that they're learning without the fear of breaking anything in production.
Yep. And you can tell that John's also a professor, teaches so that the teaching and training and the exam come absolutely naturally. So the other piece I think that Becca talked about was our process and procedures group. Again, this is the group that our VP for Finance and Administration pulled together to help us think about digital transformation. We have been able to take time in that group for the technical team to meet with all the folk who are qualified Kuali builders, and to really just kind of chat things through how a project's going, sometimes kind of huddle up and just work together in those meeting times. I think that's been a great way to sort of build those partnerships.
So I do have a question here, actually. Gavin, as you and John were talking, I was thinking about the capability and build for distributed management. Have you guys given any thought to how you're going to structure your build environment for different groups of people or departments?
Great question. We are a small enough college that really Andrew has taken on the sysadmin role, and we are structuring, and maybe Andrew, you can talk about sort of how you're structuring that.
We're using one of the built-in APIs from Kuali that we're syncing over all of our academic departments and our business offices. And we also have the people coming across with it into the blueprints. And then our access control is that we don't automatically give them access into the production environment. Once they've completed it and they're signed off, we grant them access to their space.
Right.
Which, so for Rebecca, would be into the HR office, which is your president's division. Yeah, president's division, HR office. And we have the entire tree that syncs across. And we sync all of our employees across, all of our students across, all of our departments across twice a day. And that's how we have it structured.
To make sure I understand that correctly, it sounds like you have an existing structure for how you organize your people. You've brought that over into Kuali Build. So you have those same, I don't want to call them departments, but compartments or spaces for each of these group of people. And just to try and make this a little more, I think that the end result is, let me rephrase it. What we want to avoid in a build environment is a single space that has hundreds of apps, right? And who gets to access which apps and modify the forms and change the workflows, right? So you want to make sure that, in Rebecca's case, that she has access to all of her HR apps, and that there's a very select group of people who have the ability to access not just the form and workflow, but also to access the complete list of submissions as they come in, right? Who has visibility to those completed forms once they've been submitted. So it sounds like you guys are well on your way using the blueprints feature, bringing over those roles.
Yep.
Yes, I just actually learned that the other day. I can assign permissions to people who can see things and who can access the documents once they come in. So that was a new step for me.
Yeah,
I love it. That's great.
This was part of what we learned going through the implementation process with Pauline and Greg. Super friendly, super helpful, always able to answer our questions, kind of talked us through how the sysadmin sort of hierarchies and so forth work from that permissions and security perspective. So yeah, thanks for the question. So yeah, Becca, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So taking all of this together, we really wanted to build forms and build workflow from the HR perspective that's going to give us back time, because we know that we need to focus our time on other things. And the more that we can automate things and, push things back into our existing systems, the better. One thing that I don't think I talked very much about was that there is an integration into OnBase on some of the apps that I have created, which I think I'm up to like 7 or 8, and I've only been doing this, I think, what, John, maybe 2 months. So, I have like really hit the ground running, and, there's a lot more to do, but, we are super excited about continuing our partnership with IT and the integrations that they're helping us with. I mean, it has been, things that are like super simple, where it's like read-only data, to that we really need to pull stuff out of PeopleSoft and back in. But that's where we are at, and we are super excited about moving forward.
And so, yeah, as Becca said, we've not been at this for that long. It was around about the 1st of June, we signed the contract, and then we started down the path of implementation. And, I think one of my jobs, perhaps, working with the process and procedures group, was it's like, okay, we want to transform the college and we want to do it now. And so we just said, okay, now is kind of soon. So how about we go with a crawl, walk, run approach? And we had been talking a lot in our group about sort of Lean Six Sigma approaches, sort of not waiting for things to be perfect before we release them to the campus, to innovate, test, adapt, iterate, etc. And so we said, yeah, okay, we're going to start by crawling, but we're going to go live in production in the first few weeks after implementation with some simple forms and some simple processes that are not data driven. And this way the campus can see, oh, hey, there's a new system in town and it does some stuff. Then we're going to start walking forms and processes that are driven by integrations, which is kind of currently the state where Becca's form is. And then we're going to write back to PeopleSoft, and that's our definition of running. We're not quite there yet. We're anticipating being there by Christmas, and that's kind of what we promised the campus. And that'll be sort of, Christmas will be 8 months into our ownership of Kuali Build.
And that'll be a nice Christmas present for all the folks responsible for data entry.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
should be good. So yeah, so we're about 5.5 months after contract signing. Obviously we've got Andrew, who one of his many roles is the sysadmin for Kuali Build. Works with Chris, who helps integrate the data. John does the training. Right now we've got about 10 people who have taken the training in Kuali Build. We've got 25 apps in production. We've got about another 20 that probably will be in production by Christmas. And we have built 34 integrations. So we're feeling pretty good. We're a little bit ahead of where we promised that we would be. And again, many thanks to Pauline and Greg, who supported us all the way through implementation. I think, we had the whole of our process and procedures group join some of those implementation calls, helped really get people fired up to imagine what Kuali Build could do in their areas. So I think that may be it. So if you have any questions, we'd love to hear them. Yeah, I'll take it from there.
Awesome. You guys, it's such an amazing story, and it's remarkable for me to think that you're just really getting started. You definitely, I think, hit the ground running. As much as you said you would start with a crawl, by our measure, you are off to a really, really good and very impressive pace. Can you talk a little bit, Gavin, about the decision to roll out the way that you did? We see, let me frame this question a little bit better. We see a variety of approaches to roll out with Build. Sometimes we see one app in one department. Sometimes we see everything go through central IT. So they kind of hold on to the command and control structure. They're responsible for building all of the apps. And there's a submission process. They're able to build more apps more quickly, but it still goes through central IT. And then we've seen, I'm thinking of like University of Hawaii, where they kind of let everybody build. I think they have something on the order of a couple thousand apps now across their university system on all their various islands. So can you talk about your approach and what your thinking was, and any support that you might have had for that rollout?
Yeah, thanks. As we were still at the end of the due diligence process, I think John and I flew out to Kuali days out in LA and got to spend 2 or 3 days listening to other customers tell their implementation stories. Some really great teams, and I'm forgetting the institution, University of California in Fresno. Thank you, John.
The team from Fresno, yeah.
Yeah, the team from Fresno, they're also a PeopleSoft on-base shop. So it was great, but they've got something like 30,000 students. We've got 2,500 students, but it was great to hear from them about how they did it. They had some great ways to sort of socialize the notion of what they were doing with Kuali Build. So talking with other customers and then hearing a very different approach at a place like UC San Diego also. Then we brought all those conversations back. But I think the thing for us was we were really driven by this process and procedures group. And I was on that group. A number of business units were on that group. And nobody really wanted to give it all to IT, but IT really didn't want to let people loose. And so we really worked out sort of this notion of a handshake. And that, I think, has been the key to our ability to move forward quickly. And, to be honest, some departments are moving quicker than others. And Becca in particular, helps when we've known each other for years and have a great relationship. But Becca's very comfortable reaching out to us. And this process and procedures group meeting where we go once a month is designed to make sure people know that we're available to them. And so places in other departments that we don't know so well have become more comfortable doing that. So I think when we're able to sort of partner up with a department, everything kind of gets accelerated. If people try and do it by themselves, we've had a few cases where they've got stuck, and then it's just a quick cup of coffee. We can help move them down the path.
Do you find as folks learn how to use Build and they become more competent that they start to get new ideas for things that they can do? I guess another way to phrase this question, are there new business processes that are under consideration that maybe previously weren't something that folks had thought about using Build for?
Becca may be able to answer that better than me, but I do have a couple of examples if she
Well,
I get the impression from Rebecca that she already knew all the things that she wanted. It's really just a question of where to start. Have I got that right?
Yeah, well, in my previous role, I oversaw student employment on campus, and I did see somebody popped in a question about student records and on-base. So the first thing that I thought of when I saw Kuali Build was, oh my gosh, this could streamline the student employment process. And I had to immediately reach out to the director and the new assistant director in that area and say, oh my gosh, I have something that you guys have to know about. Now, they're taking it a little bit slower just because they're in the throes of things right now. So they will probably start looking at ways to use Kuali Build maybe over like winter break or during the summer when we don't have a lot of students on campus. But, that was like my first thought is like, oh my gosh, I know somebody else who needs to use this. And let me reach out to them. I don't know how many people I think I've sent to John. He'll probably start, like banning me from talking to people about Kuali and how, it's just a great all-around tool that people can use. So that's just one example of where, we're taking it now and we're spreading it across campus because we've had such great success with it.
Yeah. And the one other piece I probably should talk to is, so we have a new curriculum that we're rolling out. And part of that is a whole lot of work on the academic side that, it's been a good number of years since we've rolled out a new curriculum, and there's all sorts of processes involved, people requesting funding to develop new courses, making sure that these new courses are going to get approved for various parts of the curriculum and so forth. And, perhaps larger institutions have curriculum management tools and so on and so forth. We don't, but using Kuali Build workflows, we're able to streamline what clearly would have been quite a challenging set of processes.
Yeah, I'm smiling over here because, as you know, Gavin, we have at Kuali some very robust curriculum catalog and syllabus software that is new. It's built on the new Kuali platform and resembles Build in many ways in terms of the user experience. But yeah, certainly for smaller institutions, Build has the capabilities. So if you wanted to really go for it, you could build something in-house as well. Just doubling back to that question because I want to make sure it's covered. This person wants to know about creating a flow that ends with the completed form and information from that form being added into OnBase for student records.
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe OnBase has a native plugin that you can use, or module they're called there. We went a different route. You can convert the forms into PDFs, and we're taking that form using our own data broker and REST API into a sweep folder where it's swept into the file cabinet. And right now in production, we're doing that with the remote work agreements. They're getting deposited into a sweep folder, and OnBase and its normal sweep capabilities is pushing them over into the employee's file cabinet.
That's pretty cool. Okay. Related to integration, a question. This is actually the second question for Lucian and Banner. We are new partners with Lucian this year and do have an integration in place. So yes, we do integrate directly via API with the Lucian products. I'm curious about reaction. Beyond the 10 builders, for folks on the receiving end of these forms and workflows, have you gotten any feedback or reaction from end users?
I can speak to it from a training perspective. The vast majority of people are very enthusiastic about this. They really are. There are some who aren't so much, but you're going to have that in any population.
Yeah, anytime you have to learn a new piece of software, on top of everything else you have to do for your regular day job, it can be a burden initially.
One of the things, again, in terms of reaction, so we have chairs of academic departments who have to submit information around some business processes. We have electronic course evaluations and sort of scheduling those and so forth. Essentially, we've transitioned from one tool to another, to Kuali Build for this. And I have to say the chairs have been pretty delighted in terms of how this is now working for them. I think some of the things that Becca noticed or brought attention to, just the simple things like the confirming emails and the workflow that is brought into your email. You just have to click in, you see what you need to do, you do it, you're done, you get confirmation, and the person that you've confirmed their choice for goes away happy. That takes out an awful lot of stress and back and forth that used to have to take place outside of a system, just to make sure that everybody knew what was going on. So we got a lot of very good feedback about that.
Yeah, and I know that on my end, from the HR perspective, the fact that you can now, all we did was replace one link with a Kuali link. So, it just is going to open up and it's going to look a lot nicer, a lot cleaner. But the great thing is that, people can see their history. So they can go in and they can say, oh yeah, I submitted my personal update form. Oh wait, did I submit my tuition grant for dependents form? Yes, I've done that. So they can see all of their forms all in one area, and their status. They can see where they're at in the process. So that has been like a super plus for the end users.
Yeah, I have to share that we use Build for everything internally as a company. So we just got back from EDUCAUSE, and one of the things you do when you get back from a business trip is an expense report. So I had to go in and I viewed all my previous expense reports, and I could see whether or not I had already requested reimbursement for airfare. I had, so I didn't include anyway. So it's pretty nice to have a one-stop shop for all my expense reports, everything I've ever submitted, just to make sure that all the P's and Q's are taken care of. I have a million questions that I could ask you guys, but we're out of time at the top of the hour here. And I got just a couple of slides that I want to round out with before we end. So let me share this screen here. This is just a few snippets from some of our case studies. Oops, I always do that. Slideshow. A few snippets from some of our case studies, kind of highlighting some of the measurable results that some of institutions are seeing from the rollout of Build. We have a lot more of these. If you grab your phone and scan the QR code, it takes you to the resource page for Kuali Build. And we have a whole variety, a library of case studies and documents and videos for you to check out there. So I just wanted to make sure that you all had access to that, as well as your account executives. So if you're kicking the tires on Kuali and you're interested in learning more, maybe getting a more in-depth demo, Liz and Danny are your go-to folks. They're your account executives. This QR code will take you to a form that you can fill out, just your basic information, and they'll follow up and get you on their calendar for a walkthrough. With that, I'll say thank you, y'all from Gettysburg. This was wonderful. It was really inspiring, encouraging just to hear how far you've come, how quickly. And I hope it serves as inspiration for a lot of other schools out there. I will have this recording available to everyone. As soon as we're done here, I'll get that link out to everybody who registered. And with that, thank you. Thank you, Andrew, Gavin, Rebecca, and John for taking some time to share your story with us today. It's really great to hear, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where you all are headed.
Thank you very much.
All right. Take care, everybody. All right. Bye.